Phil's been very active during the winter meetings over the last several weeks, adding a couple veteran arms in the bullpen, trading away Galvis, signing Santana. Always good to catch up with their assistant GM, Scott Proefrock. Scott, good to talk to you, my friend. How you been?
Good, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing well. Always appreciate a couple moments. And as I alluded to, you guys have been very busy. We'll kind of work our way backwards. I'm curious, the Santana move. When I was looking at this move on the surface, 3 years, $60 million, I went back and I really looked at the numbers, and I don't think it's overpaying. I think you're limiting the deal to 3 years. I think there's little chance of it blowing up on the back end. You're getting a guy that you can move around. You know where he can play. Outfield, obviously first base. He's got a big bat. He can get on base. I mean, to me, you're adding a much-needed at-bat. You're adding a power bat, and you're also adding a guy, more importantly, that has a pretty good on-base percentage.
Well, you're making a great case, Rich, for a guy that I can't talk about because he's not officially.
I know. But again, I know we're still. We know it's going to happen, but the bottom line is, it's a player. Listen, you can't name him per se, but that is a player I think is worth your while that you would want, a guy that adds another dimension with a bat to that offense. How about we keep it at that?
Yeah, I mean, a guy.
And I know it's not. I know it's not official.
Him would be, we think, would be a good fit.
Yeah.
On base percentage, never gives away at bats. That would be a great fit.
All right, let's talk about what we can talk about. The bullpen. Sure. We'll talk about the trading of Galvis for an interesting prospect in Yel De Los Santos. I think that's going to open up the door for J.P. Crawford. Was it a tough decision to move Freddie?
Freddie has done a fantastic job for us over the years in a lot of different roles. He was originally, if you remember, he played second base when Chase got hurt in 2012, and then basically established himself as the everyday shortstop when Jimmy was traded. So he's had his ups and downs offensively, but he might be the most instinctual player that I've ever been around in my career in baseball on the defensive side. He is. And he's a great guy, and we thank him for everything he did for us here. But it was time to turn the page, and JP is based upon what he did last year. He had some struggles at AAA, but finished strong and came up here and did a nice job and showed he belonged. And I'm sure he's going to have some ups and downs during the year this year, but he is our future. So
you mentioned his offense, his ability. When you go back and you watch it, really control the strike zone. I know that Matt mentioned that the other day, and working good at bats. And again, that's something that you guys have put in a lot of stock and a lot of value in.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're talking about JP's offense, and I mentioned what Matt said the other day. You're talking about his ability to control the strike zone, really work good at bats, and again, helps guys get on base. That's something you're really putting a lot of value in.
Absolutely. I mean, again, that's the name of the game now, and JP, he really does, as you say, control the strike zone, and has a proven ability to do that throughout his career in the minor leagues, and he did it again up here at the major leagues. The batting average wasn't necessarily, what we hope it'll end up being. But, again, it was his first time at the major league level. He's making some adjustments, and he'll continue to make those adjustments. But the constant was his ability to get on base.
How about this prospect? I know he's ranked pretty high in the San Diego Padres system. You're bringing in another young arm. How about the scouting report? Give the listeners, if anything, a scouting report on this kid, Santos.
Yel De Los Santos is I think he pitched in Double-A this past year for them. He's not on their roster, so that was attractive that we didn't have to expose anybody else to waivers. I guess we wouldn't have. I'm sorry, with Freddie coming off the roster.
Right.
But we need to have some roster space for the two relief pitchers we signed last week, and hopefully something that'll happen here in the next day or so. So we'll be back at 40 when that happens. So. We had some issues, when we opened up some roster spots. We're getting to the point where when we do take somebody off, as was shown with Perkins and Vilma getting claimed, that we're getting into the meat of the roster, and we have to play some be creative, I guess, with how we protect those players that are still on the roster. And De Los Santos was a guy had some appeal because he was off the roster, but also because of his ability. He performed very well, and he's going to be in the mix with some of the other guys that we've got, the Cole Irvins and the Quinones and those guys to compete for a job probably somewhere between AA and AAA. And again, the name of the game with pitching is depth, and anytime we get a chance to trade from our depth, which was the middle infield, to provide more depth in an area where we still need to keep adding it, because you never have enough pitching. We'll take that opportunity. But he's got a good arm, and he's a good kid from everything we hear, and he's going to be in the mix with the rest of those guys.
Yeah, and you mentioned adding some depth to your bullpen as well. Two moves that we did know that transpired as well. Relief pitchers Pat Neshek, Tommy Hunter, 2-year contracts as well. You look at Neshek, he's a veteran, went 5-3, 1 save. But again, you already saw him even before he got moved to Colorado. So he's bringing to the table. Hunter as well. Here's a guy that made 60-something odd appearances for Tampa Bay. So again, you're starting to solidify that bullpen a little bit, middle relief. These are two good moves as well, Scott.
No question. And again, everybody, this game is full of, copycats, and the bullpen has definitely become the name of the game. And, I don't know whether, and flexibility. So we added 2 veteran guys, to the back end of the bullpen to go with Neris, Garcia, Morgan, Milner, Ramos, Arano. Did I say Neris? I mean,
Heckner. Yep. Talked about him last time. Yep.
A good group of arms, and when you have those kind of guys and you have some flexibility, some of those guys have options. You can work it so that you can make sure those guys are well rested every time they go out. And I think you'll see Gabe be very creative with the use of the bullpen as we move through the season, and make sure those guys are well rested and prepared, and they're matched up appropriately for the situation. So
I'll ask you this, and I know we had the conversation a couple months ago. I'm just wondering if the thought changed. Are you guys still in the market potentially, or at least keeping your options open for another frontline starter?
I'd say we're definitely in the market for a starting pitcher. That market has not established itself to this point. I mean, I'm not even sure, other than Tyler Chatwood. I think he may be the only starting pitcher that's agreed to terms on a multi-year deal. There's a lot of guys that are still out there, and until that market starts to materialize, I think we'll kind of see how it plays out. I think there's definitely, at some point, we're going to need to add to our rotation. Whether now is that particular time remains to be seen, and I think we'll probably be, somewhat opportunistic. If the market's slow and there's an opportunity to jump in, I think you'll see us be aggressive if we think we can get a good deal. So.
Let me ask you this: when you look at this offense, and again, a couple minutes with Phillies assistant GM Scott Proefrock, aside from the said player that I mentioned at the start, when you look at Hoskins, Hernandez, Crawford, Herrera, the one thing I've noticed, if you look at these guys in the projected opening day lineup, you got several hitters that have reputations, even though they might be inconsistent at times, but they can wear down opposing pitching. Again, that's something I think moving forward that, if nothing else, that's a benefit, especially with a young lineup.
No question. I mean, anytime you can get, guys that at work counts and are building up the pitch counts, the earlier you can get into the bullpen, the more opportunity you have to tire a bullpen out over the course of a series. So, that's definitely, one of the philosophies that Matt has and is implemented throughout the organization, is to control the strike zone and not to give away at bats in the battle. So I mean, I think you'll see that as a common characteristic of our players as we move forward.
How about Hoskins and the way he played, burst onto the scene? What would be, and I don't want to say realistic expectations, but I mean, obviously you guys know he's a centerpiece. You can build around him, but do you think there's going to be more added pressure on him to really control like the heart of the lineup, or there's no issue of come April where you think he might press a little bit early on to try to build off some of that success from last season?
Well, I mean, again, with all these young guys, I mean, there's and again, you saw it at the end of the year. I think Reese got tired, and he after the barrage of home runs, he slowed down the last couple of weeks. I think all young players, strive to develop consistency in their games, and but they're this is a game of adjustments, and the major league pitchers are going to adjust to them, and they're going to have to adjust right back. So, and we believe in Reese, we believe in Nick Williams, we believe in Aaron Altier and JP and the rest of the young players that are on the come, and the guys that are here, Franco and Hernandez, Alfaro, hopefully can show that in a more extended opportunity. But it's about making those adjustments, and we can expect all these guys to have some ups and downs. But again, this year, hopefully more ups than downs, but hopefully this year is another opportunity for these guys to really, establish themselves as bona fide major league players, develop some consistency, and be ready, as we move forward to get us into a very competitive position as we continue to add. Through the players coming up through the system, and by strategically participating in the free agent market.
Yeah, and I was reading this earlier before, the importance of getting on base. When you look at the Astros and what you guys were able to do over the last several years, I mean, I think it's understated. Sometimes I think it's almost undervalued. People just want the sluggers, the home run hitters, the guys that got to drive and runs. But you need young players, especially your core, your nucleus. You need these guys to be patient at the plate, and you need them to get on base. And I just think for some reason, sometimes you lose sight of that. Not you per se, but I think fans lose sight of that. That is important where, you have guys that have patience at the plate. That's why I brought up before, even though we can't discuss Santana, but other players that you've had or other players that you have in this lineup, they can work the counts and they can figure out a way to get on base. Now you're manufacturing runs and you're playing a little bit of small ball.
Right. And again, you hope, that that's infectious as well. You hope that, when other players see guys doing that and having success, that they realize, hey, this not only helps me but helps my team. So I think that's what our plan is, and I know that's what, like I said, that's what our philosophy is. To do that and to again, not give away at bats and be work the count and to still be aggressive as well. There's a fine line there, but you got to, when the opportunity presents itself, you got to be ready to take advantage of it. So.
Let me leave you with this one before I let you get out of here. So in the event the said deal is eventually confirmed, or if it's not per se, I would think logically then Hoskins would get moved to left. If anything, Altier would probably be the primary right fielder.
I mean, it'll be interesting. I think there's an opportunity for all those guys. If Hoskins does move to the outfield with Herrera, Nick Williams, and Altier, I think you have an opportunity for all four of them to get significant playing time. And again, there's matchup capabilities. There's two right-handed and two left-handed hitters. Three of the four can play center field. Three of them are pretty good defenders. I think Reese showed he can be an average left fielder, but he's probably limited to left field. So I think Gabe's going to have a lot of options, to move those guys around. And if you give guys days off, I mean, one of the things that's really become very in vogue and probably rightfully so is making sure these guys are rested during the year. And if you've got you've got the ability to run those guys out there without very much of a drop off, you're in a pretty good situation. And I think that, because Reese can go in to play first base as well. If said player is on the team and he needs a day, there's opportunity to shift, 5 guys around for 4 positions. So.
Well, listen, you guys been active. I always appreciate you jumping on board. I'm sure there's going to be some more moves to come. And like you said, and we've had this discussion before, in baseball, you can turn around fairly fast and fairly quickly with the right moves. And, you bring in the right manager and guys start to gel early on. You go from 50 to 55 to 66. This can be a 500 team. And then we're talking about, within a year or two, potentially contending, especially in the shakeup, everything that's going on in the NL East. I mean, this as good as anyone. It doesn't take much. No,
and again, you saw it last year. Minnesota.
Yep.
Turned it around pretty quick. Milwaukee jumped in. I mean, when you got young players, you have the opportunity to get surprised, and hopefully pleasantly surprised. And when that happens, you don't want to put any limits on what may or may not happen going down the road. So.
Yeah. All right, listen, I know you guys been busy. I appreciate it as always, Scott. Have a good holiday. We will talk very soon. Always appreciate you making time to jump on board.
All right, Rich, you too. Have a great holiday.
You got it. Take care, pal. Scott Proefrock, assistant GM from the Phillies.